Welcome to the Breech Birth podcast. I'm Sasha Hopkins, private midwife, breech birth educator, and your host. This is a space to hear the real, raw, and powerful stories of women who have experienced breech birth in all its layers. Each episode features honest conversations with women who've experienced breech firsthand, offering insight and reflection. This podcast was born from the knowing that these stories need to be heard, to inform, connect, and reclaim the story of breech birth. Whether you're navigating breech birth yourself, supporting others, or simply curious, welcome and thank you. The Breech Birth podcast is independently created and produced. If you'd like to support the continuation of this space, you can do so through Buy Me a Coffee. Your support helps keep these stories being shared and accessible to women and families around the world, and you can find the link in the show notes. Thank you for being a part of this community. Hi, Maddison. Welcome to the podcast.
Hi, how you going?
Good. So before you start your story, please share some context with us. Where are you located?
We are in Newcastle, New South Wales.
New South Wales, Australia. And what kind of care did you receive in your pregnancy, birth, and postpartum?
I was through our local group practice program. So we're lucky enough to have a few different programs. So it wasn't the MGP that birthed at the hospital. It was the home birthing group practice, but all ran through our local tertiary hospital.
That's great. And how many weeks were you when you had your baby?
38 and 6.
And vaginal or cesarean?
Vaginal birth.
Perfect. Do you want to share a little bit about yourself before you jump into your story?
Yeah, absolutely. My name's Maddie. I am a midwife here in Newcastle, New South Wales, and I'm also a birth and motherhood photographer. Shameless little plug there. Tender Rush on Instagram. And I live here with my beautiful partner, Dan, and 14-month-old son, Rush. Yeah.
Beautiful. And have you got any other children?
Just Rush. Yeah. Just the one.
Yeah. Cool. So do you want to start from the beginning? Was it planned pregnancy? You're a midwife. Were you already thinking about your options before you fell pregnant?
Totally. Yeah. Actually started my midwifery degree in 2020, and I remember you have to get some bloods done for like bloodborne viruses and whatnot before you start the degree. And my GP was like, oh, we're starting a midwifery degree, so when are we planning on having kids? And I was like, calm down, Linda. And at the time, how old was I at the time? 24. So I was like, oh, I still feel young and I'm not ready for kids yet. And she was like, okay, well, when you do feel like kids, come back to me ASAP. And that has just always stuck with me. I was like, oh my goodness, I do have PCOS. So I kind of see where she was coming from there. Anyways, fast forward 3 years, did my midwifery degree, worked in as a midwife for 2 years, and then we planned on having a baby. And you're all excited, and you know, first month pops around and you think it's just going to happen, and it didn't just happen. And I remember a little voice in my mind going, when you want to get pregnant, come back to me ASAP. So then the second month rolled around, nothing again. Third month rolled around, nothing again. And we went back to my GP, and she was beautiful. She was like, yep, we're just going to, with PCOS times, we'll pop you on some metformin. So I did 1 month of metformin and fell pregnant in Europe. So yes, planned pregnancy. Yeah, that's that.
Yeah, great. And did you plan home birth from the beginning? Is that something you'd already decided?
Yeah, absolutely. Before midwifery, that would not have been my answer. My mum had a private obstetrician. I was a cesarean section. My brother was an instrumental. She's quite scared of birth in general. But after midwifery and as a student, we were lucky enough to be placed straight up in the home birthing sort of realm, so that we learnt normal, and that was our baseline for all learning in the hospital, instead of the other way around, thinking one was abnormal versus the other. Yeah, absolutely. From the start, gold standard home birth is where it was at for me. And I felt educated and strong enough to be like, if anything diverted from normal, then we'll go in, and that's fine. So yeah, home birth from the start.
And what was the referral process to get into the home birth program? So I'm assuming it's publicly funded by the sounds of that.
Publicly funded.
Did you need a referral from the GP at that point?
No. So the GP with our local tertiary hospital, the GP refers to what they call an IMAP process, which is initial maternity assessment planning. So everybody goes in at that 12 to 13 week mark. They see a midwife first. They have their 12 to 13 week scan. They have a preeclampsia blood pressure check. What else? And then they see an obstetrician that will look at all of their risk factors, blood pressures, scan, medical history, and make a plan of care. And that's where they then slot you into which model of care suits you best and which you want to be in. So they will then refer you to, so I went into the BMGP program, and yeah, they just sent a letter to them and the midwives would call me up and started that whole process.
Yeah, great. And what did that care look like for you? Do you want to explain that for those listening?
Absolutely. It's beautiful. It's amazing. It's the most wholesome experience ever. So your midwife comes to your house for all of your appointments, all of your antenatal care, unless that's not appropriate or you want to go in or you go to the birth center or something. So yeah, my midwife came to all my appointments at my house. She saw me the whole way through. We did some home birth planning at one stage there until the breech situation arose. But yeah, she was on call for my labor and birth. I had met a lot of the other girls from the team as well. And yeah, they stay with you for up to 6 weeks postpartum as well, which if you're in the normal, like fragmented public sort of care, it's up to 2 weeks. But with this group practice program particularly, it was 6 weeks postnatal. So that was awesome.
And so when was it discovered that baby was breech? Was it through ultrasound or through your midwife feeling your belly?
Yeah, it was through palpation at 28 weeks. And yeah, he was breech the entire time. He didn't turn at all. He didn't even go transverse or, anything. He was consistently breech. So she felt at palpation at 28 weeks. And then I had a scan just to follow up with that. Still breech. I did all of the things. So after, I'm sure we'll get there, but after my ECV at 37 weeks, we decided to plan for a vaginal breech birth, not at home.
Okay, so they wouldn't support at home for the breech presentation?
Yeah. So it was a little bit different to having a private midwife, I suppose, in that aspect, that they were still running with the guidelines of the public hospital. So if really anything was outside of normal, your care would be transferred into the hospital. Your midwives can follow you depending on what their workload was like at the time. But yes, if anything deviated from normal, so meconium, prom, anything like that, then you'd be transferred into the hospital.
Yeah. And how was the support? Did you make the conscious decision from the beginning to have a vaginal birth? Was it offered as an option to you, or did you have to prompt that?
No, it was, I think my midwife knew that I did not want a Caesar for my first baby. I mean, you don't necessarily aim for a cesarean, I suppose. For my first baby, I was really adamant I didn't want that because that would then jeopardize future publicly funded home birth. So VBAC is another exclusion criteria for that group practice model. So it was funny. She never really even questioned it. I kind of, he was breech, oh, blah, blah, blah. Next appointment, breech, blah, blah, blah. Next appointment, he's still breech, Mad. And I said, well, what do we do now? And she said, well, we'll just have a vaginal breech. I said, yeah, cool. Perfect. Nothing else crossed my mind. I was like, yeah, that's the answer I wanted. Thank you.
Yeah, that's great. That's
yeah,
good.
It's amazing.
And so I'm assuming your midwife followed you into the hospital for that? Yeah.
Yes, she did.
Did she have any experience that you're aware of with breech?
Yeah, she did. I think there had been a couple potential surprise breech home births on the team. And they had all recently done a couple of big breech workshops. And yeah, I don't know. I feel like breech is just kind of happening a lot at the moment, or maybe we're just talking about it more. And like a month or so before, I think they all did a couple of breech births at the hospital as well. So I felt great. I felt like everyone kind of knew what they were doing. They were all supportive. They're all excited. So that made me feel excited to go for it. So yeah, she did follow me and they were great.
And you said you did things to try and turn baby. Do you want to just share what you did? Obviously the ECV was unsuccessful.
Correct. The ECV, I was very hesitant before doing it. As a midwife, I had been involved in multiple ECVs and they just looked absolutely barbaric. I was very, very nervous to do that. I would say it wasn't as bad as I went in thinking it was going to be, but I did all of the things to try and turn baby. So I did all my spinning babies every single day, every morning, every night. I'd come home from work in my scrubs and shoes and lay on an ironing board upside down off the back of the couch. I did the ice and the heat. So I had the heat pack where was the heat pack? Heat pack was at the bottom and the ice was at the top to try and get him to be like, away from the ice. I slept with the Raffy, the music little Raffy machine thing for kids, playing at my gynae. I don't know. Try some music down there. So we tried music. I did acupressure, acupuncture, moxibustion. I did the works burger. Oh, I went to the ocean baths at sunrise multiple times because it was freezing cold. It was winter, doing handstands in the water. But he was adamant. So yeah, then we went for the ECV at 37 weeks. Went in there for that. I had the creme de la creme, the top dog obstetrician, and she could not get him out of the pelvis. He was lodged. I think she did once, but she said we can't. He's just not going anywhere. So yeah.
Do you know what sort of breech position he was in?
Yeah, he was frank breech.
Yeah. Okay. And so labour, how did that begin?
Absolutely. Yeah, I was 38 and 6, which was also wild to me because I just expected, I suppose, as a midwife that I was going to go all the way to the top, to the 42 weeks. I was a little bit unprepared mentally, but we went to Korean barbecue the night before, which is the one where you like cook your meats yourself in front of you. So I woke up the next morning with I was like, oh, that feels a bit funky. Maybe I didn't cook me chicken properly. I was like, oh, interesting. And I messaged one of my girlfriends. I was like, poo pains or labor? Like, we're going to find out. And we used to do that all the time. Like, what's happening today? Nothing. I went for coffee with my girlfriends, and I remember walking in and being like, one sec, girls, keep walking. One sec, girls. And I was complete denial. I had no idea what was going on, like not switched on. We had our coffees and our cakes and everything. And then we left at about lunchtime. And when I was driving home is when I think it dawned on me because I had stopped talking to someone. I'd stopped being distracted. And I was like, these poo pains are quite regular. That's quite interesting, isn't it? So I messaged my partner who was at golf. He finished up and came home. And then he got home and I'm just bouncing on the birth ball and scrapbooking my life away, the baby booked. And he said, well, what are we doing? Should we get ready? I said, no, we'll be doing this for days. We'll be here for weeks on end. And he was like, I don't know about that. You're doing some things. And so I was like, oh, maybe I'll just time them. And I remember thinking, how embarrassing. Like, there's nothing going on. Why are you timing these Braxton Hicks? But alas, I got the app out, did all the things, and then it starts doing the go to hospital, go to hospital, go to hospital. They were a nice regular 4 in 10, I would say 35 to 50 seconds each, but I didn't think they were strong enough. So I did kind of pause for contractions. I didn't think they were strong enough. I could still kind of do my thing. And we had like a miniature argument about whether I told my midwife or not. I was like, oh, she's gonna think I'm silly. Like, leave her alone. She wants to rest. And he's like, what if it's Saturday night? What if she's going out? You need to tell her. So I eventually did tell my midwife. Then what happened? I was in the shower for a hot minute, and then my midwife arrived. Daniel was like, you need to get out of the shower. And I was like, you won't catch me out of the shower. I'm not getting out. And he's like, but she's here. I said, well, if you read that instruction manual for the TENS machine back to front, then I'll get out of the shower. Well, I don't know why no one reads this instruction manual before labor. So silly, but he figured it out, bless him. Dried me off, slapped it on. Yeah, we just did all the things. And I did find when she entered, and we're super close, super great friends, but I did notice my contractions kind of just paused for a moment while she was there. And I was like, oh, see, this is why I wasn't going to tell her, blah, blah, blah. She's like, why don't we just see what's happening and we'll make a plan from there? Because we, known vaginal breech, we did have to plan somewhat. We couldn't go too much with the flow. So we did a vaginal exam and I was 5 centimeters. And I was like, hallelujah, something is happening. That's crazy, with some bulging forewaters. So I put on the adult nappy and she said, I'm just going to leave you to your own devices. They'll start back up. You just do what you got to do and message me when you want to go in. And sure enough, 30 minutes after she left, I was like, it's time. And Daniel was like, oh, are you sure? And I was like, no, it's time to go. But in that little gap there when she had left, Daniel was kind of doing some planning with her. And I don't want to say my favorite, but my preferred obstetrician, who was like a known breech advocate. She was on call for a couple of breech births at our local hospital. I felt comfortable with her. She worked a lot with those midwives in the group practice. I really felt like I needed her in my space, and she wasn't working where I was meant to be birthing that night. She'd picked up a casual shift at another hospital, local as well, so only 20 minutes drive from me. But yeah, behind the scenes while I'm just laboring in the living room, Daniel and I kind of sort of starting to plan where we're going to go. And they all knew that I really wanted to follow this one particular obstetrician. She's amazing at what she does. So yeah, those plans were made and the decision was made. We were going to go to her. So we kind of altered a little bit there in labour as to where we were heading. But yeah, 30 minutes after Asha left, we jumped in the car. I was on all fours in the back, moaning like a cow. Illegal, I know. I remember being like, why won't this work? The TENS machine. And it was absolutely working, but I was just, you're uncomfortable. There's nothing like being in a horrible position and having contractions. Yeah, drove down the highway, got there at about, I would say 6:15. We got to the hospital. And I remember looking at this one guy sitting at the bus station out the front of the hospital, and the look on his face, I don't know what I was doing, but he was like, is she good? I must have been, I thought I was going to be this quiet, dainty little labourer. Nah, I was yelling to all the gods. Yeah, got up there. Then what happened? Yeah, the beautiful obstetrician met me at the doors, bless her heart. She was like, come on in.
Were you booked at both hospitals or you just turn up?
No, I wasn't booked at the hospital we ended up at, but I think the calls were made behind the scenes. I was given approval to follow her specifically for the fact that she was a specialist kind of in that area, as opposed to who was on at the time the hospital was meant to go to.
Yeah.
So for safety reasons as well, we kind of went that way. Yeah, got in there. They kind of briefly chatted about the CTG, and I was originally going to opt for just intermittent auscultation, but I remember a conversation with the consultant when I had my ECV, and she was talking about how when breech babies are born, the cord is kind of compressed up against their trunk as they're being born. So she kind of worded it in a way that if baby wasn't necessarily happy with laboring, then the pushing part they really wouldn't be happy with because their cord was going to be compressed for an extended period of time, opposed to cephalic birth where it's kind of not touched to the end. So in that moment, I said, okay, well, yeah, let's put on the CTG for continuous monitoring. I'm fine with that, but I need you to turn the sound off. I can't listen to it, even just as a midwife, that noise, like you're just on edge, aren't you? Like that noise. So I said, you have to silence it. You have to turn it away. I can't look at it. And it was totally fine. I mean, fine because the CTG was fine as well. But yeah, without seeing it or hearing it, I didn't really notice its presence. Yeah, so hopped in the bath, which was amazing. I would say though, the TENS machine, I think I preferred just having the TENS because it helped me during a contraction, which is where I felt I needed the help. Whereas the bath was so nice for in between relaxing. But when the contraction came, I felt really like I had nothing to do. If that makes any sense? Like I was on my own. It was such a mental game.
You needed a comb to squeeze.
Yeah, I did. I had the comb.
You had one? Yeah.
I destroyed my hand with the comb.
Yeah.
I think actually in the postnatal period, like my midwife came over and was like, how you going, blah, blah, blah. And I just kept going, but my hand is so, I did some damage to the hand. So the comb was great as well. What happened then? Yeah, labored in the bath for a couple hours, not long. And then I remember I don't think I had that like overwhelming sense to push, but I just knew something felt different. And then I told my midwife, I said, I don't know, something feels funny down there. And she's looking and I was like, oh, and then the next contraction came and I heard myself and I was like, oh, okay, that sounds different. I would say it's go time now. You can never fully turn off midwife mode, can you? It's just lingering. I tried to turn her off, but she was kind of there. So yeah, after that contraction, my midwife was like, yeah, time to hop out of the bath. Wasn't recommended to have my breech baby in the bath. So I sat on the toilet for a little bit and my waters hadn't broken yet. So there was a lot of pressure there. And I had 2 or 3 contractions on the toilet, super, super intense contractions, but I knew they were doing exactly what they were meant to do, but so overwhelming on the toilet. And so she was like, just pop your finger in. Like, what is it close? Do you feel anything? And I just put my finger there and it was like literally just there. And then the next contraction came. Big waters broke. And then finally the doctor entered the room for the first time. She's so amazing. She just left me to my own devices to the very end. And she came in. She said, do you mind if I check if we're fully dilated? That was horrible, laying on your back at the very end, having a contraction. Oh, I just kept trying to get off the bed. And I was like, no, we just got to get it done. We were fully dilated. And then it was showtime. It was time to start pushing. And I remember having to say to one of the midwives in the room, because I was like on all fours on the bed over the back of the thing, and everyone's kind of, standing around. And I was like, do you guys want me to push now? And they're like, yeah, it's time. And I was like, oh, okay, sure. But I never really had that overwhelming urge. I don't know if that's like a breech thing or. Yeah.
You haven't got the bones on the pelvic floor and the nerves where it's softer.
Wow. It's so interesting because it was my first birth as well. So now I think cephalic's going to be completely different. Like it's a whole new experience again. Yeah. So I pushed in all of the positions. I pushed in all fours on the bed, all fours on the floor, birth stool. And then we ended up in this like sumo squat, exaggerated sumo squat. And I was holding onto my midwife's arms and Daniel was kind of behind me so I didn't tip back. But that position was great. I felt like maybe I was getting my pelvis in the right position and I could figure out exactly where to push. And I remember one of the girls in the room saying to me, this is funny because we say this, well, we don't say it all the time, but it is a common phrase. But now, Maddie, for the next one, I need you to hold your breath and put your chin on your chest and push all the way into your bum. And I remember thinking, I'm not doing that. Like, what do you mean? Thanks, sir. I remember I say that all the time. I will not be doing that. Thank you for the advice. Like, it just didn't feel right. So, it's so much extra insight once you've actually gone through it, isn't it? Yeah, so interesting. But did all of the works burger. And was kind of pushing in that exaggerated sumo squat. And eventually I had no kind of concept of what was happening down there. I think like with cephalic birth, the head's coming out, then you kind of know the process, the shoulder dips and then, restitution and all that. But with breech, I had no concept of what was out, what was happening, how far we were, whatever. And my midwife was like, you need to get on all fours. And I was like, no, this is perfect. And she's like, no, I need you to get on the all fours now. Because I think it was just the pressure and, potential tearing or whatnot. And so she kind of gently tugged me forwards a bit and I kind of just landed. And then I was like, oh yeah, this is where we need to be now. And I was pushing and pushing. And you know how when cephalic birth, they kind of rock backwards and forwards for a little bit before they hold. And as I'm on all fours, I looked up at the obstetrician and I locked eyes and I was like, when will he stay out? Because I felt like it might have been the rocking. And she was like, soon. And I was like, soon? That's not the answer I wanted. Anyways, pushing for days. And then my midwife finally said, we're at the knees now. And that's where I was kind of like, oh, it was like a dose of reality. I was like, oh my God, he's coming out. Like I'm actually birthing him upside down. That is crazy. But it also gave me that sense of like, you're nearly there. Like you're at the knees. That's nothing. We just head and out. And then, I felt the legs go. I felt them release. They were like, and that was like, oh, thank goodness. I never felt the arms happen kind of. I just kept pushing, I guess, just in hindsight. Don't recall the arms coming out. And then we got to the head and he was deflexed like this. So I think we did a contraction or two like that and there wasn't much movement. And so my obstetrician was like, I think it's time, Maddie, that I just help a little bit. I was like, yep, that's fine. And she just did the clavicle press.
Yeah,
so
shoulder press.
The shoulder press so that his head rotated. I felt every second of that rotation, like the whole felt slow motion. But as soon as it did rotate, it was just like he was straight out. Passed through me legs and up onto my chest. And he was perfect. He was great. Just rubbing him down straight into midwife mode. I was looking at the pediatrician like, go away. We don't need you. You're not wanted anymore. Thank you. And he did a big, beautiful cry. And that was that. Oh, he didn't know the gender either. So poor Daniel was like, when he was like, I see the bits and they're sitting on the floor. Bless him. He's like, I didn't know if you wanted to know. It was so cute. Yeah, it was a boy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so baby got to stay with you, didn't need to go anywhere. Yeah.
He was great. Big cry. He fed in like within 15 minutes, I think it was. He was straight
Right.
on. I think maybe when I stood up off the floor, my blood loss was only 300 mils. It was nothing. But when I stood up, that initial like little splat, I was like, oh, I've got to get him on. Like he's got to fed.
Your
Like,
midwife mind.
try to turn it off, don't you? You try. But he did, yeah, he got on there straight away. He was perfect. And I think I stood up as well, and my midwife was like, oh, should we go sit on the toilet now, like for physiological third stage? And I was like, no, you won't find me pushing again. My bum hole hurts so much. I was like, can we just do the active? She's like, whatever you want to do, babe, we can do it. So we did. We went over to the bed and did the active third stage. And I had a cool placenta as well, which we didn't kind of know about. So as she was doing, the other midwife, she was doing the, what do you call it again?
Control contraction.
Yep, she was doing that bad boy. And she kept saying, oh, I think it's kind of shearing a little bit. And we're like, oh, we'll just stop for a sec. And then I ended up kind of like coughing it out, sort of. When we looked at her, I had not heard of this. I'm only a baby midwife, 2 years out. A furcate placenta. Have you heard of that? Furcate. So interesting. So it's
I don't
not
think I have.
right. It's not velamentous, but it was. So say placenta's here, cords coming down. It stops a jar. The actual Wharton's jelly stopped, and then
On just blood vessels.
just the two.
Yes. I know what you're talking about, but I didn't know that's what it was called.
Yeah, furcate. So interesting, isn't it? That was obviously what she was feeling sheer a little bit, but yeah, that was that. We had active third stage and a cool placenta.
Did you get a photo of your placenta?
Yeah, I did.
Are you open to sharing?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah. I've got tons of beautiful birth photos, but yeah, placenta's really cool. Yeah.
So did you end up being in the birth center or in like the birth suite for that birth?
Because this was not the hospital I was supposed to go to.
Yes, of course.
It was just their birth suite. It was just a smaller hospital.
Okay.
But they'd recently had this big renovation. So it's this humongous room with a giant tub and like, you could throw a frisbee across the room. Nothing like the hospital that I work at, which is quite small and a bit compact. But yeah, it felt like a birth center.
And those days after or hours after, did you go home pretty soon after? Or did you stay there for a bit?
Yeah, we did. We pretty much just fed. Then I got fed. Best part, sandwich. I had a shower. He had all his checks. And we were home. He was out at 9 and we were home by midnight. So
very efficient for first baby. Did very well.
Yeah, well, I had a beautiful team. So I think because it wasn't just a simple, normal birth, there were a couple of extra people in the room. I had more hands to help, like, get me ready and, like, find my clothes from the bag. And someone was getting me snacks while someone else was doing the baby check. And, like, it was like a well-oiled machine in there. So, yeah, as soon as he had all his things done, we were ready to go. And then the midwives just walked off and me and Daniel were like, how do we put it in the car? What do we do now? It's just us. It was beautiful and normal and everything I could have hoped for my first birth. Very lucky.
Yeah. And breastfeeding journey, what did that look like?
Definitely. He didn't have like necessarily any problems latching, but he's had a very violent tongue tie, like the full heart shape business, like really tight. I pursued it as long as I physically could, but I was in agony. And then, the whole everything that comes from that. He was feeding frequently because it wasn't great big deep latch where he was getting lots. And then I had oversupply because he was feeding so quickly and I was in agony and it was just everything. So luckily, because we have that long period of time still under the care of the midwives, we just popped into the local hospital and on the ward, they just did a tongue tie release for me. So, and that was like, it was the snip, so not the laser. It was the snip. And then I put him on immediately after. And I was like, wow, is that what it's meant to feel like? Like it was immediate relief when he went on. So thank goodness we did that. Yeah, amazing.
Yeah, that's great. And how old was he now?
He's now 14 months old. But when he got his, I think he was like a week, tongue tie release, a week, or maybe potentially getting on to 2 weeks old. But he'd never lost or anything.
Yeah. Are you still breastfeeding?
Still breastfeeding. We've just finally successfully weaned overnight feeds so that we
Yeah.
can all kind of get a couple extra hours sleep. But yes, definitely he's still a booby monster, that boy.
And any issues for him? Like, did he need any osteo, chiro? Did he have the hip check, like the ultrasound? Were there any issues with his hips?
Yep, he had no issues. He had multiple hip checks. He actually had 2 hip ultrasounds.
Mm-hmm.
And both were clear. So he came out unscathed. Actually, additionally, I think I should pop in that I was also a breech baby, not a
Yeah.
vaginal breech, but
That's why you were a cesarean.
yes, yes, I was. I was a footling breech Caesar baby. So yeah, my mum and my dad actually both at multiple times throughout my pregnancy were like, "Oh, do you sure you want to do a vaginal breech? You know, like we've been through this," and they were definitely scared for me based on their own experiences, but I was very much scared of doing their experience. So it was like had a lot of deep and meaningful conversations about my choices and what midwifery looks like today versus back then. But yes, mum is very proud. She tells everyone vaginal breech birth. So yeah, that was just another fun factor. So yeah, curious as to whether potentially there's like genetic pelvic shape or something like
Yeah.
that.
Like
I
cornuate
guess,
uterus or something.
yeah, I guess we'll see next time around.
Yeah. Did you do any education on breech in pregnancy? Like once it was you, okay, this is happening.
Only like my own personal education, nothing like formal or official. Me and Daniel made sure that we did like all of the usual antenatal classes, but we every single night watched a video or two from Breach Without Borders on their like Instagram page or whatever. I wanted to make sure that he and myself, because it is something you don't see every day, but I wanted to make sure he wasn't absolutely bamboozled by what he was going to see. It is interesting, a bit confronting to see them come out, a bit misshapen, I suppose. So, yeah, he was very much open to watching all of the things, and it didn't scare him. I remember him saying all of his mates had said, I felt queasy or I felt like I was going to faint and whatnot. So Daniel was like super aware. He didn't want to look, even though they were encouraging him to, because he didn't want the chance of potentially passing out because everyone had told him he was going to. And then eventually, when baby was halfway out, the midwives were like, no, no, have a look. You'll see the gender. And he worked up the courage and he said, that was the best part. I'm so glad I did it. Like, I don't know why I was trying to avoid not looking. Yeah, it's just, really sweet. So I'm glad we watched all of the videos prior.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It'd be interesting, just the environment that his friends were in. Like, did they have a team that you all knew and trusted? Because that would change the energy in the room as well to how they may feel at looking at something. That woman's not feeling supported, she might be screaming, and that in itself can make it terrifying for the partner. Whereas
Absolutely.
you felt supported, you had a team that you trusted, so you felt safe, and so then that follow on is that he can feel safe. Yeah,
Absolutely. Yeah. And especially with having the midwives come to your house, I find that then absolutely Daniel can build that rapport as well. Like it's not being a midwife myself, I was very conscious of the fact that I need to make him involved in the process instead of him being like, oh, no, you know what you're talking about, or you know what you're doing. You just handle that. I wanted him to be super involved. So glad we had an opportunity to have that program. It was amazing, the best.
do you have any resources that you would recommend to anyone who might be listening that have a breech baby on board?
Definitely Breach Without Borders, just to see it, to view it, because I think the more that I just scrolled and watched it happening normal and scrolled and watched it happening normal, that was implemented in my mind as opposed to, the usual discourse surrounding breach. So just watching it on repeat, you sort of start to put yourself in that position and yeah, you can imagine yourself doing it. I'm a bit woo woo, but manifesting it, imagining exactly what it's going to sound like and feel like and look like. Imagine the room, imagine the people. It kind of just happens, and your baby's telling half the story, so you can only make choices on your end. And whatever will be with them will be, and we'll be guided by them to some extent as well. Yeah, Breach Without Borders, amazing, amazing.
Yes.
And this podcast,
Yeah.
yeah, for the stories.
I want to add, for the manifesting, when you're trying to manifest something, it's also important to focus on the emotions behind it. When you feel the emotions, and then so you spend some time imagining it and feeling what would that feel like for you, and then letting it go. If you hold on to it, then it doesn't
Yes.
come. So you need to be able to surrender and trust it will come.
Beautiful. Yeah, totally. Totally. And just having, whatever tools work for you. I've used a lot of affirmations, not necessarily ones I think I did a hypnobirthing course. I kind of made them up to an extent, I suppose, but whatever ones work for you or whichever ones come to you in the moment. I remember when I looked at that obstetrician and was like, when will he come out? I remember thinking, okay, let's stay in our body here. That was a bit of like an outburst. He's not going to come faster. He's not going to magically appear in your hands. You just have to go straight through the middle of it. That's the way to the end. So then I just closed my eyes and was like, just go through it. Just go through it. Just go through it. Just go through it. And that was how I got to the end. I couldn't wish myself to just pop up at the end. I had to experience all of it. Yeah.
Yeah. I like that. That's great.
Yeah.
I feel like that's your words of wisdom right there.
Words of wisdom.
Just go through it.
Just go through the middle. Right.
Yeah, that's perfect. Awesome. Thank you so much for sharing your story. It's been an honor to listen.
Thank you for having me. I'm so glad we get a chance to put some normal breech birth positivity into the world.
Yes, that is the goal. There's many stories to tell.
Beautiful. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you for listening to the Breech Birth podcast. These stories matter. They stretch what we think we know and bring voice to experiences that need to be heard. I'm so grateful to the women who have shared their experiences with us, raw, real, and full of wisdom. If this episode resonated with you, please follow, share, or leave a review. You can find us on Instagram, Facebook, and YouTube at Breech Birth Podcast. And if you have a breech story to share, I'd love to hear from you. Until next time, may we continue to reclaim the narrative, one story at a time.